Senator from Michigan.
Madam President, on so-called Liberation Day this week, President Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on all of our trading partners, the size, the scope, and the impact of which have not been seen for nearly 100 years. The last time our nation imposed tariffs of this magnitude, it was when Republicans passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in the 1930s. And when they did that, it crashed our economy and drove the United States further into the Great Depression. It was a history lesson that should never be repeated. Let me say that again. It was a history lesson that should never be repeated. But yesterday, Donald Trump imposed far-reaching tariffs at a rate higher than Smoot-Hawley, higher than it was then with those catastrophic consequences. The history is clear. This strategy does not work and can have absolutely catastrophic consequences. No surprise, the president's tariff announcement sent shockwaves through our economy, dropping markets to their lowest level since the COVID pandemic 2020. Just yesterday, the Dow Jones average dropped more than 1,600 points, a 4% decline. S&P 500 companies lost a combined, this is a big number, $2.4 trillion in value. And as Wall Street opened today, we're unfortunately seeing the market continue to plummet. As I speak right now, another $2 trillion lost. That's quite a record for the president, to lose Americans $4 trillion in 2 days. That's never been done before. That is a record. So let's just get this straight. During his first administration, we know Donald Trump grossly mismanaged the pandemic and tanked our economy then, and it took years for the markets to recover. So now, to kick off his second administration, he's playing poker with Americans' livelihoods, with Americans' retirement savings, and with Americans' hard-earned income. It's clear that what this means to the average American. It means that when you go to buy things like eggs and clothing and new appliances for your home, they're going to cost more. You'll notice that when you go to the store. It's going to be very real. You'll have less money in your pocket, and it's because of Donald Trump. He owns this, because of Donald Trump. If you're thinking about retiring soon, you have seen the last couple days, if you look, your 401k and your IRA retirement funds decimated. And it's because of Donald Trump. There are folks out there right now who are being forced to have real, hard conversations about whether they can even retire as they had planned, or are they going to need to keep working a little longer. And let's be clear, it's because of Donald Trump. But you know, he didn't have to do this. In fact, some of you may know Jim Cramer, a leading voice in financial markets. In response to Trump's decision, he actually said, quote, I struggle for what the president's game plan is, because if you wanted to make the market crash, I think you would go with this plan. He said, it should not be in our country's interest to have the market crash. That's not a hot take. To me, that's just plain old common sense. So what happened? Well, on Wednesday, the country experienced a national sales tax day. In the coming days, weeks, and months, the impact of the president's national sales tax will be devastating. And it won't be our competitors that are footing the bill. It'll be the American people that pay the tax on their groceries, their gas, and all the other goods that they buy. For instance, take the price of a new home. Building a new house requires everything from lumber to steel to concrete, light fixtures, ceiling fans, appliances. And thanks to the president's all-out trade war, imports of every single one of those projects will be subject to the national sales tax that Americans will pay. That Americans will pay. And as a result, the price of a new home has been estimated to increase up to $20,000. Buying a home is already challenging enough for most folks. putting that additional cost on American families is simply unacceptable. And it's not just homes. Gas, vehicles, groceries, household appliances, all will become more expensive because of Donald Trump. Remember when you are seeing higher prices at the store as you go to the store in the next few weeks and months and you say, whoa, this price is up. It's because of Donald Trump. He owns this. In fact, it has been estimated that the Republican national sales tax will cost the average family more than $5,000 per year. This national sales tax won't miraculously improve trade relationships or bring jobs home. It'll only make it harder for hardworking Americans who are trying to create a better life for themselves and for their children. In fact, and this statement should be shocking, but it's true, Donald Trump is actually prepared to plunge this country into a recession, one that could cost up to 400,000 jobs. And he said it. Just yesterday, because of Donald Trump's tax plan, J.P. Morgan raised the odds of the U.S. heading into a recession to 60%. And it's likely to go up as things continue. But again, what does Donald Trump have to say about all this? He said he doesn't care. Look it up. It's clear. He said it. And I can honestly say I do not think I have ever heard an American president say they don't care if we go into a recession. I've never heard an American president say they don't care if American families and small businesses are hurt because of their policies. I don't think any president in history has ever said that, not just those that I've experienced in my life. And what makes it worse is that while Americans bear the brunt of this new sales tax, the White House and Republicans here in Congress are actively working right now to give a big tax break to billionaires, not everyday working people, billionaires. They're going to be increasing the taxes on everybody through this national sales tax. And they plan to do it, among other things, by cutting things like essential health care that Americans rely on each and every day. Now, I will say, I'll step back here, there are instances where tariffs can make sense. Tariffs are, if they're strategic, if they're targeted, they can be useful tools to bringing back American jobs. Certainly, they can be used to combat unfair trading practices used by adversaries like China. And I support those types of tariffs. For example, last year I supported the 100% tariff we imposed on Chinese electric vehicles. We know the Chinese government is actively working to undermine our national security and our economic success. And companies backed by the Chinese Communist Party are flooding the global marketplace with artificially cheap vehicles that are really actually capable of stealing Americans' personal data, committing espionage, and even manipulating folks on the road while they're driving. It makes sense to raise tariffs on those technologies because they do indeed present a real national security threat to Americans, and they could impact in an incredibly negative way our auto industry. And when it comes to protecting the future of our auto industry and cementing Michigan's leadership in automotive innovation, there's no question that I support taking strong action to bring auto manufacturing jobs back to the United States, to secure a better trade deal for our auto industry, and to make sure that we have a level playing field for American workers and businesses to succeed. But these on again, off again, across-the-board tariffs, this isn't a real plan. This is chaos. And it will not help us to achieve any of our long-term goals. For tariffs to work, they have to be a part of a comprehensive strategy that actually supports American workers and businesses. They can't just be haphazardly dumped on our trade allies like Canada, whose goods and products actually help us grow our manufacturing sector, create more jobs in America, and remain the greatest economy in the world. Take our auto industry, for example, the lifeblood of my state and the foundation of American manufacturing. The trade relationship between Michigan and Canada is so integrated that car companies cross the US-Canada border up to 8 times before they're actually installed in final assembly. In fact, in Michigan, if Michigan were a country, we would be one of Canada's largest trading partners in the world. Going after Canada will be devastating for Michigan businesses that work hand in glove with our closest trade ally to the north to grow their companies and to create jobs here at home. If President Trump is serious, if he's serious, big question, if he's serious about leveling the playing field and bringing auto manufacturing jobs back to the United States, here's a playbook that he could actually follow. One, we need to pursue targeted tariffs on our adversaries like China and our biggest overseas competitors to one that we ensure more cars are sold in America, to make sure they're built here in America. Two, we need to renegotiate any trade deals that aren't favorable to American businesses and workers, something that offers far, far more certainty than sporadic tariffs. Specifically, we need to take a look at USMCA, where we have a real chance to address some of the shortcomings and outdated policies of our current trade landscape. Because while USMCA brought back some manufacturing jobs and some job opportunities, it's far from perfect. China, unfortunately, has found ways to take advantage of the agreement's preferred treatment of goods by locating facilities in Mexico. And labor standards, particularly in Mexico, certainly need to be a whole lot stronger. We will have an opportunity to renegotiate this agreement next summer, at times that the current administration actually agreed to when it negotiated this deal in President Trump's first term. And we need to seize that opportunity. But with these tariffs looming like a black cloud over some of our most crucial relationships, I'm concerned we'll be coming to the negotiating table with one hand tied behind our back. And let's be clear, we should look to pursue those types of renegotiations throughout all of our trade agreements to ensure they are advantageous to American businesses and workers. Three, we must aggressively enforce the trade laws that we already have on the books. We need to double down on our efforts to deter trade cheats like China, which requires providing more resources for our federal trade agencies, not indiscriminately firing federal workers. Doing so will allow us to counteract countries that try to evade tariffs, dump their products onto our markets, and encourage transshipment. And finally, if President Trump is serious about protecting auto jobs here in the United States, he needs to end his attacks on the Inflation Reduction Act, plain and simple. Right now, Republicans are proposing a budget that will repeal incentives in the IRA, like the Advanced Manufacturing Tax Credit and the Electric Vehicle Tax Credit, both of which have already created thousands of new auto and battery manufacturing jobs right here in America. To me, that is absolutely unthinkable to end these. Why would you want to put an end to something that is proven to be successful at creating economic growth and good-paying manufacturing jobs in our country? It makes no sense. The president needs to put his money where his mouth is and end this tariff charade. The stakes are just too high for American families, for our workers, and for our economy to get this wrong. Madam President, I urge all of my colleagues to say no to the national sales tax. And instead, let's liberate some common sense and work together to make this country stronger. Laura?